You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SEBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SEBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SEBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SEBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again to commence another broadcast week here on the old Options Insider Radio Network. I will be your host, your guide, leading you down the way here for another week's worth of content on the network. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the pro side, upon which so many of you are binging and mainlining these days, where you get the access to the fun pro stuff, 200-plus episodes, exclusive podcast feed, live streams, giveaways, all sorts of fun goodies, pro Q&As, you name it. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more. As we learn who's joining us on the old program today, let's introduce him ahead of time because we got a little bit of business to take care of here. I'm joined once again by the unclest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, as well as from the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. I introduce them now because, listeners, it is time to commence our broadcast week with a little bit of fun, a little bit of silliness. Yes, it is time for our 80s Wrestling Trivia Challenge. Here we go. All right, everybody, we come into this week's session. Uncle Mike has a commanding lead, so the meatball is going to have to do some work to really dig himself out. I do believe it's somewhere around estimate. I'll have to get the proper numbers from our producer. I think it's around 15 to about 8.5 right now. So Uncle Mike running away with it right now. And today's one, he may run away with as well. We shall see. Today's one kind of driven by some timely factors going on in the world of wrestling, 80s wrestling and modern wrestling, kind of intersecting last week in a bit of a tragic way. It was a bad week for wrestling fans. Two big superstars dying last week. First off, we had Terry Funk, who was kind of an 80s and also even earlier than that, 70s some folks, and other into the early 90s, kind of one of the early hardcore guys who really inspired the Mick Foley career and everything else. But we're not going to talk about him. That's not about him. Of course, it was tragic that Terry Funk died, but he was older. The tragedy that shocked everybody last week was the death of another wrestler who was young and in his prime of his career, very hot. Some might say the most over guy in the business right now. Died tragically from complications from COVID, which is a good reminder. We all keep saying, hey, you know, it's post-pandemic era, but maybe take some precautions out there. But he was the son of a, I won't say famous, I will say definite mid-card 80s wrestler who's near and dear to Uncle Mike, but maybe not to the rest of the world. He had a few gimmicks, one of which appeared on our wrap-up show for last year when I was giving out prizes, hint, hint. But this person ended up, he was in a tag team in the 80s before he got into his more infamous gimmick later, I think in the late 80s, early 90s. And this tag team he was in back in the 80s, he got so into it, he got to like his tag team partner so much that he ended up marrying his sister and naming the person who passed away last week his son after. So his son's name was effectively his wife's maiden name and then his last name. So obviously he had a big fondness for them. They tagged early on as the U.S. Express. In fact, they were the first real American gimmick. That song that everyone knows for Hulk Hogan, I Am a Real American, probably one of the more legendary songs in 80s wrestling and all of wrestling, that was actually written for them. Then somehow, last minute, I don't know, Vince pivoted, decided, let's put that on Hogan instead, and the rest is history. But they had that American gimmick first as the U.S. Express. I did see Mr. Meatball buzz in first, which is interesting, trying to get this lead whittled away. Mr. Meatball, of whom am I speaking, who was one half of the U.S. Express, who later on had a somewhat notable, if kind of goofy gimmick in the quote-unquote occupational era, which was something I was not aware of in the wrestling era, and also had a son who was a wrestler himself who tragically passed away last week, sir. Who am I talking about?
Mike Rotundo.
Yes.
Otherwise known as Captain Mike, otherwise known as Michael Wall Street, otherwise known as Irwin R. Shiesty.
Captain Mike, that might be one of that's up there with the Red Rooster in terms of bad gimmicks, but there were some bad ones in his career. I don't know if he ever really had a good quote-unquote gimmick, but yeah, just crazy stuff out there. Good old IRS, the figure that Uncle Mike actually won. That was his consolation prize because he loved him so much for coming in second place last year in our 80s wrestling. Yeah, a bit of a tragic week. If you're and even remotely inclined at all about wrestling, this is not 80s wrestling, this is more modern, but his son, Wyndham Rotunda, a.k.a. Bray Wyatt, was quite a unique, legendary character in the space. You know, you learn after watching some of this stuff for a while, it's not all just the steroid muscles and the flips and everything else. The guys who can crack character are few and far between, and his son was one of them. And his son could make some. He had the Swamp Father. He had a character called the Fiend that became, I thought was horrific, but it turned out to be the biggest thing in the business. It was enormous. People loved it. It was huge. And then he had a gimmick that went along with it where he was like a demented children's show host. It's crazy. It's very hard to explain. But if you go watch some clips of some of the stuff he did, it'll give you, I think, a better appreciation for the character side as opposed to just the steroids and the muscles and the flips that everybody thinks it is. Some guys can operate on a different level, and IRS's son, Bray Wyatt, a.k.a. Wyndham Rotunda, both names mixed together of the tag team, was one of those guys, and definitely a tragic loss for a modern wrestling fan. And my son was pretty sad to find out. I was too. He was a pretty impressive character worker, which is interesting stuff. As we keep on rolling into some other interesting stuff in the markets. So here we go. It's time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block. Yeah, it's not all just muscles and sweat. Give me a guy who can tell me a story at the end of the day. And he was one of the few who could. So that's that's a loss, I think, out there for a lot of folks out there. As we keep on rolling into the world of the markets, not many losses out there on the screen unless you're holding some long vol, in which case that's slowly wearing through your fingertips right now. But coming into the start of the show, we are now on day 2, session 2, post-Jackson Hole. The market's clearly liking what Powell had to say on Friday because we are up yet again, up about 0.2% right now. The Dow up about 0.7%. NASDAQ up about 0.81 out there, just ticked 0.8 right now. So looking robust to the upside yet again. Of course, that means our vol friends looking a little bit less robust. Dropping back down. VIX at about 15 1/3 when we kicked off the show. It puts it down not quite a full point, about 0.85 from where it was this time last week. VVIX 84 down about 8 points. VXX 2330 down a full point, actually about 1.3 points from where it was on the Thursday show. UVXY 1680, so rapidly going back down below the 17 handle, down nearly a full point, 0.9 of a point there. SVIX 28 1/4, of course, going in the other direction, up about 3/4 of a point. UVIX 380 down 0.2 of a point, and VolQ 1875 down a little over a point, about 1.3 points. Mr. Meatball, we'll start with you, sir. What are your enduring memories of one IRS? If you have any thoughts on, I'm not sure if you were aware of the career of his son, but if you have any thoughts on the junior Rotunda, a.k.a. Wyndham, have at it. And then C, what's catching your eye out there in yet another day where vol is eroding, sir?
I really haven't been into the WWE as of late. It's not really dragging me in the same way it used to. But his father, for sure, I know real well because I watched him in the WCW. Then he moved to, his timing was pretty good. Then he teamed up with the $1 Million Man for a tag team that was what was the name of their tag team? It was
Money Inc.
Money Inc. Right? Yeah.
Money Inc. That's right. And they were a pretty good tag team. He was a pretty good mid-carder. I think he won the Intercontinental belt a couple times. Definitely won the tag team belt with Ted. And just an all-around a good working pro. Guy could run a gimmick, and he could and was pretty technically sound. So just an all-around good wrestler, and I feel my condolences to him and his family, and to his son's family.
Yeah, 36 dying of complications of COVID. That's pretty rough. What isn't looking rough right now, at least for you, is a little bit of downside in the vol space. We were joking about those VIX puts. I actually put in some orders for them that we were joking about, some of those VIX downside puts we were joking about on Friday. Of course, I got busy with shows. I kind of missed them. The market moved away. But they're looking pretty good for you, sir, out there right now. What's catching your eye out there in the markets today, sir? Yet another green one.
Well, it's a Monday, so markets are up. We did see they try to sell at midday, and then we saw pretty strong bull order that's now starting to come off a little bit, hit the markets. VIX is, kind of at the lows that we've seen for the last few, it's at lows that we haven't seen for at least a few days. And, vol is, pulling back a little bit. Let's see if there's some fall through. The bond market has been looking a little bit stronger. It seems to have stabilized, which I think is making markets feel better. And that is kind of what you're looking at here today.
That is what we are looking at indeed. Mr. Uncle Mike, I'm sure you have much to share on one half of the U.S. Express, a.k.a. Mike Rotunda, sir. What are your thoughts there as you look at the figure you were bestowed of IRS for your consolation prize? And then B, what is catching your eye out there in the market, sir?
Yeah, IRS is sitting on my desk right now, still in the package. Just a good reminder to pay your taxes, as he would always like to tell people. With Mike Rotundo, I mean, those guys are my heroes, Barry Windham, Mike Rotundo. I really wish that they would have stuck with one another in the WWF back in the day with the whole U.S. Express thing. I'm not sure why one left or maybe Vince wasn't going to push him, whatever the case may be. But I really liked those guys. And I know I've talked about the sad story on my show the night that Brutus Beefcake blinded Barry Windham in the Philadelphia Spectrum. I mean, just to show you the family that I grew up in, I was never told that Santa Claus was real, but when Barry Windham was blinded, no one told me that it might not be a real thing, and I was in tears as a kid. So that kind of shows answers a few questions for my psychological profile growing up. But with that being said, today in the market, it's definitely up on the day. There's really no one sector sticking out per se. It is fairly broad-based, which is a good thing.
Energy looks really strong today, Mike.
Let me look at that. Well, I mean, I'm looking at the XLE. I mean, we're up 50 cents on the day, so I mean, it is strong. But by comparison to a lot of the other sectors, it's not up 8%
not really
or anything
sticking out.
like
You're
that.
right. Yeah, it was up a lot more earlier.
So yeah, and looking at it, it is good to see something broad based for those of us bulls out there. 4,400. We have stayed above that one now, so it looks like that might be a level of support that the market can live with, so to speak. And to add to what Mark said about bond stabilizing, I think that is quite the big deal. We had a downgrade, but I'm not convinced with the U.S. debt, but I'm not really convinced that that's the end of the world, so to speak, because these are the same people that also said that the mortgage-backed securities on the garbage mortgages a few years ago were investable assets. So I think the market is smarter than that. And the reason why I'm very confident in U.S. government debt is because, well, quite frankly, we have bigger bombs than anybody else. And we're the big kid on the playground. So worse comes to worse. Not trying to sound mean to other countries by any means, but that's just the way it is. So I feel very comfortable along those lines. I don't really, just looking through the stocks on my watch list and stocks that we're invested in through the strategic night, the triple income, nothing's really sticking out to me as a major mover by any means. This is just a good old fashioned bull market today. It's not one thing causing it, just that we got buyers across the board. And that's really exciting to see, in my opinion. And that's what I'm seeing.
That is what you're seeing out there today. Yeah, an interesting one out there, listeners. Will we continue this rally? Is it just another head fake, listeners? Before we head back to the inevitable whipsaw, the inevitable downturn. As the Meatball alluded to, they did try to turn it a little bit before the show. It seems like that did not succeed. So we shall see. The session is still young. We shall see if the whipsaw is yet to come, or maybe that's behind us. It's now just green for days and bullish optimism lay ahead. We shall see. What we will see right now also is that VIX, once again, looking kind of light, but it's kind of one of the only ones out there. It's interesting. VIX kind of doing its own thing, even though overall volume still very robust. Remember, we're coming into the tail end of August. This should be the time when VIX volume is in the toilet, listeners. The ADV is still 723. It's so robust. You've got, the CEO of the SEBO going out doing interviews about how great VIX volume is. So it is a little surprising to see VIX remaining as robust from an ADV perspective as it is right now in the dog days of summer. Right now, this second, not so much, 225,000 contracts on the tape. So doesn't seem like it's primed to get there today. But we all know VIX just needs to put up a couple 100,000 contracts in one sprint, I should say, and it'll be right in line again. So let's just wait. Maybe by the end of the show, we'll get there. SPY, though, saying, look out below. 5.56 million contracts on the tape for SPY. SPY looking robust. So SPY's still in the whipsaw-y kind of mood. It likes a little bit of this action. VIX, for whatever reason, not so much. 8.61 is the ADV out in SPY right now, so looking very robust. The S, similar numbers, 1.5 million right now. The ADV, nearly 3 million, 2.96 million. So you can see why SEBO CEO is out doing the rounds talking about volume. You got the S threatening 3 million contracts a day, VIX threatening 723,000 contracts, putting up those numbers in the dog days of summer. That's nothing to sneeze at. So IWM, 432,000 contracts, the ADV 851, and the Qs at about 2.27 million, the ADV 3.86 million. Let's get out to the single names and see what we could find out there today. Shall we, listeners? Let's start right back in China. Whenever there's news, whenever there's headlines in China, usually his name's going to be on our list. It's good old Baba, 92 and a third. Coming in at number 10. By the way, right now, this level, this is kind of what I expect for the dog days of summer in terms of what it costs to break into the top 10, which is not a heck of a lot. BABA only doing 142,000 contracts. Today, that's enough to make the number 10 spot. So kind of a quiet start to the week, at least for the single names. BABA, 92 and a third, up about $2.50. A lot of talk about the Chinese government trying to step in and support some of those markets over there, reducing commissions, doing some other interesting things over there, and all that. Just, it's another day where China is on, so BABA back up out there. It's the proxy for China, I know, for a lot of you out there in your portfolios. Number 9, this thing is the proxy for AI, at least one of them right now. It's good old Softy, looking pretty light today as well, only 149,000 contracts. Softy up about $1.25 right now, trading $3.24 and a quarter. Looks like they hit it down to as low as $3.22, pretty much even this morning, and the high was $3.26.15, so a little over a $4 range already today, hanging out kind of in the middle of that right now. So kind of interesting there. We'll see where the next leg takes Microsoft. Right now, it's taking it all the way to a paltry 149,000 contracts. Number 8, the artist formerly known as Google. It's Alphabet Class A, almost 131 right now, up about $1. So 130.90 to be precise right now. This one's had not even a $2.50 range. The high was about $2.54. The low was $130.19. So decent little range, but not quite as active as good old Softy, but good enough for the number 8 spot today, 203,000 contracts. Number 7, back to the meme land. It is AMC, 204,000 contracts. AMC back off $0.75, trading $11.70 right now. This one's had a little over $1 range, 11 and a quarter to the dark side, 12.35 to the upside out there today. This one, of course, the drama out there. Write many books, and people have been making a movie out about it, and about it pretty much this pretty soon. Dumb Money, which I didn't know about until some of our pro members clued me in our live chat last week. This thing was coming out, and actually sounds absurd. They pitched it and sold the option on it back in January of 2021 before anyone knew what the hell was going on. So that's always a sign of quality. But there's like a decent cast attached to it, so might be an interesting retrospective on all this meme stock madness. And the king of it, of course, AMC right now, 11.75. Good for the number 7 spot, 204,000 contracts. Number 6, getting a lot of the usual suspects here today. It's a quiet day. That's kind of to be expected. It's the artist formerly known as Facebook. Meta, 289.64 right now, up about $4.14. Good for 211,000 contracts. We're already at number 6. We're not even north of $250,000. That's the kind of paper I expect for August. In terms of range, the low is 285.80. The high, 291 and about a half right now. So a little bit more living happening out there on the Meta front. Number 5, we're back to the A level, the A tech names. It's the Amazonians, 259,000, all the way up to number 5, and we're barely over 250,000 contracts, listeners. The Amazonians taking a bit of a break today, 132.82 off about 44 cents. They had a little over $2 range, $2.10 to be precise. The low 131.85, the high 133.95. So hanging out right in the middle of that range pretty much as well right now. And then number 4 staying, we should start calling it the A block. They're all neck and neck with each other these days instead of the chip zone. Number 4, we do have the bottom half of the chip zone these days. It is AMD. Number 4, 350,000 contracts, and we're already at number 4. Listen, that is pretty anemic paper. AMD today up 44 cents, trading 102.70. It's at a range of about $100.90 to the dark side and 104.07 to the upside. So once again, kind of hanging out in the middle, like the rest of the market, kind of waiting maybe for that next leg, or maybe it's going to hang out here for the rest of the day. Either way, good for 350,000 contracts. If you like A-related tech names, I got another one for you. The A block continues with the fruit company, Apple, number 3, 444,000 contracts, up $1.35 today, trading just a tick shy of 180. It had a low of 178 and about a half, a high of 180.20 out there today. So interesting times. Market's happy. Apple is green. That's all you need on the screen today. Good for 444,000 contracts. Number 2, then, I guess by process of elimination, you could probably guess what number 2 is. It's the other AI stalwart. Some might say the tip of the AI spear. It is NVIDIA, 690,000 contracts. Again, a day that ends in Y, so why wouldn't NVIDIA be up $8.21 or 1.8%, trading $468.40 right now after coming off pretty surprising earnings last week as well, even though they did top out last week at 511, and that kind of post-earnings euphoria, they really just drove it to the moon. 511. Couldn't really sustain that. They hit it back down on Friday, back to about 451, hanging out right now 467 and about a third. Of course, a far cry from its 52-week low. You may want to cover your ears on this one, listen. It could be painful. Back in October, it hit 108.13. And now it's trading 467 and about a half. So, yeah, quite the run it has been on, listeners, in this AI era. Good for number 2, 690. And then number 1, again, you don't need me at this point, listener, to tell you what number 1 is. It's Tesla, right about the level we expect. So even in the dog days of summer, Tesla's going to put up 1.1 million contracts at this point of the day. That's just what it does. Tesla, kind of a rounding error today, only up about 8 cents, trading 238.67. Intraday, obviously a little bit more of a range. Low of 235 and a third, a high of 244 and a third. So pretty much a $9 range on the day. Interesting, hanging out towards the lower end of that right now, which is kind of interesting. But all of that good for 1.1 million contracts out there today. If you're saying, maybe we're done with some earnings, no, more bangers in store for you this week. NIO, all of you, none of you can't get enough of these EV names, especially the cheaper, lower cost ones. And NIO's got the extra bonus, or perhaps question mark, of having the Chinese element on top of it. So you get a twofer there. You get EV and you get China all wrapped up into one name. It was a frequent offender on our top 10 for a long time. That's kind of fallen off over the last 6 months or so as other names have supplanted it. But NIO popping off Tuesday. We got Best Buy on Tuesday. They've been writing the death knell of this thing forever. Let's see if it can survive another quarter. Big Lots, HP, and Box on Tuesday. Wednesday, Vera Bradley. So if you like your maybe garish floral prints, then there you go. Vera Bradley's for you on Wednesday. I apologize to all the ladies in the audience who love themselves a little Vera Bradley. Wednesday, Salesforce, Chewy, and Five Below. Thursday, we have Dollar General and Ollie's and Broadcom and Lululemon. Maybe like yourself, instead of the garish floral prints, maybe like a little sheer yoga pants. Well, there you go. Lulu, they will never live that down in my name. Selling see-through yoga pants. And then Dell on Thursday as well. If you're looking for some hot off the presses action, luckily we got you covered. Now let's go out to our friends at Orat, see what they got cooking for us. Hot off the presses right before showtime here. Let's go to everybody's favorite out there right now, listeners. Let's go to Best Buy there tomorrow before the bell. 72 and 2/3 is where they were trading when we ran these numbers. They were pricing in 427. In the past, they've moved 436. So bam, a whole heck of a lot of nothing. It's pretty much exactly what we've seen in the past. NIO, this one might be a little bit more interesting. 29th before the bell as well. 1083 is what they were trading at when we ran these numbers. They were pricing in $1.04. In the past, they've moved 64 cents. So you might say it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking from pretty much 2/3 to $1, that's actually a pretty big jump, certainly in percentage terms. So interesting. Pricing in a little bit more juice in China. Again, who can argue? It's EV and it's China all molded into one name. You can't argue that more juice probably isn't warranted. Let's go out. Let's go to Five Below. Let's go to the premium dollar store. Uncle Mike, cover your ears. This is too rich for your blood. 30th after the bell. 177.70 is where they were trading. They were pricing in $12.10. In the past, they've moved $12.20. I'm seeing a theme here, listeners. Let's see if we can buck that trend. Let's go out to Ollie's. Spoiler alert, the answer is no. They're the 31st before the bell. $71 even is where Ollie's was trading. They're pricing in $5.62. In the past, they've moved $5.78. So I'm seeing a lot of market makers going out, doing their homework, and just towing the line out there this cycle. Let's go to Lululemon. Let's see if sheer yoga pants can account for a little bit more juice. 31st after the bell, they were trading $365.60 when we ran these numbers. They were pricing in $30.25. So that looks pretty juicy, especially when you compare it to their recent history of $26.55. So that's a decent amount of extra juice. Not quite $4, $3.70 or so. But still, a decent amount of extra juice considering everyone else is pretty much playing it fast and close to the vest. Interesting stuff out there. That probably also accounts for why our updated earnings season report right now, listeners, everyone's pricing things in exactly the same as the past. That's probably why we are exactly at 100% right now in our earnings season. So everything so far has moved exactly in line with their straddles. Market makers aren't stupid. They see these numbers. They can run their own models. They see this stuff. So, yeah, not going out on a limb in either direction this cycle. Obviously, I'm joking. Not every name. You know this if you've been listening to the show. But in aggregate, it all averages out to a nice par right now, 100%. Will we stay there? I'm going to guess we're probably going to dip below that, but you never know. Earnings season can be a fickle beast out there. You know what else is a fickle beast? It's the Eye of Sauron. So let's unleash it. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get weird. Let's get wild. Let's unleash the beast that is the Eye of Sauron. Mr. Meatball, sir, are you ready? Are you in fine form to analyze a little bit of unusual activity, sir?
I am ready indeed.
All right. You sound giddy. You sound dripping with anticipation. So we'll see what we can deliver for you today. Keep you amped up to 11. All right, let's go out here first. This is a newcomer. I like when we have some newcomers bursting on the scene here. This is Vertex Energy Inc., ticker symbol VTNR. VTNR. Looks like a refining name out of Alabama. And actually headquartered out of Texas. The subsidiaries are in Alabama. Trading 4.25 right now, up about 16 cents. Let's go back on the year. You guys know the energy market. It's been shall we say, a rocky year, a tumultuous year. A year ago, it was trading about $9 exactly, so looking pretty robust a year ago. Then they came for it the first time, crushed it down to $5.40 in September. Then they rallied it up to about $9 again in November. Then right back down to about $5.50 in December. I'm seeing a bit of a pattern here. Then right back up, this time to the high for the year on March 3rd of $11.20. They tried to maintain it. They sold it off pretty quickly back to $7.25 on March 15th. And they rallied it again. This is a volatile energy name, back up to 10.33 in April. So in the span of a month, it did a lot of living. Then it began its long, slow death spiral. They crushed it down to 5.33 again. That 5.5 level right around there seems to be an interesting level for them. They bounced off it a few times this year. Back in September, and then back again in December, and then once again in June. They got down to 5.33 that time in late June. Then they rallied it again up to $6.50 on July 24th. Then it kind of fell off a cliff here again back to $4.99 on July 25th. So they finally broke through that 5.5 support they had been bouncing off of a few times that year. And since then, it's kind of been lookout below. They've been drifting lower ever since. They broke through the 5 handle back in July. And since then, they've been cruising back down. They hit their low recently just last week of $3.91. So in the last few sessions, they're up about 30-odd cents, so that's looking pretty good. But over the past year, no bueno, off about 53% on the year. So let's see what we got going on out here. And Mr. Meatball, this is an interesting one, hence its inclusion in the Odd Block. Looks like we got someone maybe smoking a little bit of the longer-term hopium here in Vintner. Someone coming in this morning, and looks like they scooped 9,000 of the Jan 10 calls, but not just any Jan 10s, Jan of 2025. So we're going out a ways. We're going out into the far-flung future. Interesting, this name, not that liquid. These options, definitely not liquid, going out to Jan of 2025. The market 45 at 58. That's not terrible for a Jan 10 call. More than 2x out of the money going out a year and change. That's actually not bad. We've seen much worse markets on much more liquid names. They scooped these Jan 10s 9,000 times for 58 cents. If you're wondering, it's all vol when you're buying a strike that far out of the money. In this case, it is a 62 vol, so not nothing. There are obviously going to be earnings between now and then. The next announcement is on November 7th, so you're buying a lot of time. You're buying a whole bunch of earnings announcements. The question, Mr. Meatball, is that enough to incentivize you to spend nearly 60 cents for a roughly 2.5x out-of-the-money option with not quite a year and a half to go, sir? What say you?
No. There are better options to trade there. I mean, you can pay 60 cents for the 10s, The 7.5s are 85. I don't get the trade. It's not. They overpaid for something way out of the money. This is not my favorite way to play a bull position. So hopefully they're right, and all the best. But I don't like the play.
Yeah, you can always tell when someone maybe skims the first few chapters of the options book and maybe doesn't read the full thing, and then they go out and they put a trade on like this. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not. There's just better ways to get this type of long-term bullish exposure in a name if you were so inclined, rather than just swinging for ridiculous fences like this. You need a 2.5x pop by Jan of 2025, and you're paying 60 cents. I could see if you got these for a nickel, you want to throw some money on a lottery ticket, maybe even a dime. 60 cents for these things. No, thank you, sir. There are better ways to go about it. So, yeah, I don't love these. Maybe you take a more optimistic view on these, listeners. I'm curious. Do you trade Vertex Energy? The stock itself is 4.25, so some might argue that in and of itself is your option. So maybe you take some of that money you're going to spend on 60-cent premium, which is not nothing at this point, right, listeners, and put that to work. Maybe picking up something that's going to be, actually worth it. You're talking close to $500,000 they spent just on premium. You can buy some shares with that. Again, you have the ride to zero, but you also have all the other fun. There's no dividend here, so you're not harvesting a dividend over that time, but you're getting all the upside there as well. So I don't know. There's a lot of arguments to be made. You could do. We've talked about bullish risk reversals in the past. That's one way you could go, but even that far, it's a long way out for a bullish risk reversal. But there are intriguing things you could do. You could do stock substitution, so you get something much closer, even in the money, going out that far. Then you're writing this garbage against it. A lot of things you could do to get this bullish exposure that I think would be preferable to this. But nonetheless, this one tops our list, listeners, here for today's bit of weird paper out there. Let's go out. Let's see, a little bit closer to home this time. Let's go out to NAAS, NAAS. This is NAAS Technology, Inc., ticker symbol NAAS. Now, they don't make network-attached storage devices, at least that I can see, but this is a Chinese name, trading $6.73 right now, off about 30 cents today, so not feeling that Chinese love today. On the year, let's see, kind of an interesting year. A year ago, it was trading $6, so up a little bit on the year, and it kind of hung out there for most of the year, trended a little bit lower, I suppose. It got down to about $4.50 in March. So it did trend lower for the first half of the year. Then it shot up on a rocket ship from $4 all the way up. Looks like it actually printed $2.75 somewhere. I don't see where that happened. I'm guessing maybe December or January. Yeah, it hit $2.99 on December 29th. It must have touched $2.75 intraday. Wow, because by January 4th, it was trading $4.85 again. So looks like a bit of an aberrant print out there. By the way, this thing was still trading $4 on March 23rd. Then they shot it up to the high for the year on April 6th of $12.78. So this thing pretty much did a three-banger in the span of a few weeks here. Went from $4 pretty much even on March 23rd to on April 6th, $12.78. Then it came off just as rapidly by May 2nd even, it was trading $8 again. And then it kept trending lower, back down to about $4.75 on June 27th. Since then, it has managed to rally again, about $2 back to where it is right now, $6.74. So it's been a bit of a tumultuous year here for everyone's new favorite, NAAS, N-A-A-S. And let's see what our Eye of Sauron found out here. All right, Mr. Meatball, we've got a similar theme, but maybe they're playing a little bit different tune here. We got somebody who wants some long-term love, but not getting quite as outlandish. They came in and scooped 2,000 of the Dees 7.5s this time. So we're trading 6.75 right now, listeners. They bought the Dees 7.5s. They paid 85 cents. So you could see right there, closer to the fire there, also closer from an expiration perspective, but more premium than we're talking about here with the Jan 10s. But the vol here, still off the charts, about a 129 from an overall vol perspective. I don't have when the next announcement is. They must have just popped off recently. I don't see that data here, but obviously going to be an earnings announcement between now and December expiration as well. The stock was actually higher when they bought these this morning. It was 7.03, so the stock has dropped about 30 cents. So that's your first not great sign. But then again, these are D's, so they're not going to get too overwhelmed by that. Still interesting stuff. Another different way to take a longer-term bite at the upside apple, Mr. Meatball, this time in NAAS technology. What do you think of these? You like these any better?
I mean, I like it better than the first one. I don't love paying more than 10% of the value of the stock for a couple of months. But, you know, if the stock's going to move, this one's a lot more reasonable. I still don't love it, but it's way more reasonable.
Yeah. Hard to wax enthusiastic about this one, but of the two, definitely far more reasonable. Let's damn it with faint praise, the more reasonable of the two. Let's keep things going because it is such a quiet day here in the dog days of August. Let's pay off some of our paper we've been keeping an eye on. Let's go out to SABR Corp. This used to be a hot one back in the go-go 90s, early 2000s days on the SEBA. I remember some folks calling the Saber Doggy. It was the hot thing, and I forgot what crowd it was in. But it was one of the names for a while there. Everybody was trying to get a piece of, along with your CMGIs and your rims and all that other fun stuff. SABR Corp, ticker symbol SABR, travel tech company, listeners, if you're not familiar. Trading $5.16, up about 20 cents on the day. On the year, it was trading $7.40, so a rough year for them. They came for it the first time back in November. Crushed it to $4.50 on November 9th. Then they rallied it back up. By February 3rd, it was trading $7.92, so that was its high for the year. Again, that February 2nd, February 3rd timeframe seems like where a lot of names outside of your AI behemoths, where a lot of your names topped out for the year, and they haven't really looked back. And SABR definitely fallen into that category. Hit $7.92 on February 3rd. Then it just fell out of bed. By March 17th, so about a month and a half later, it was trading $3.88. And then they kept coming for it by June 23rd, it hit its low for the year of $2.99. So since then, it's had a nice pop. You just look since June, it's rallied hard, including popping on August 2nd. It went from $3.69. By August 10th or so, it had hit $5.64 again. So pretty much doubled in the span of a little over a week, I should say, out there. And it's kind of been hovering in this $5 range ever since. So definitely an intriguing first half of the year, and then the second half had its own issues, and now in the last month we're seeing an aggressive rally again. So intriguing stuff. Let's go back to what we were talking about on the August 10th show, just a few weeks ago, listeners. We were talking about a call-palooza going up in SABR, and at the time we first noticed 3,000 of the AUG 6 going up for 13 cents through the bid. That was kind of weird. The stock at the time was $5.58. Then we saw more going up, $25.09 for 16.5 cents. Then we had more and more, total of about 13,000, almost 14,000 went up on the day. Now, the prints were kind of all over the place, which made us kind of wonder, were they overriding these or were they buying these? If we go back in and kind of dig through the paper, it does seem like they were probably selling these bad boys at the end of the day. And let's hope that's the case, because the stock went out at $5.08 on expiration. Again, they were selling the sixes. So let's assume an average price of somewhere around 14 cents for somewhere around 13,000 of these. So you're talking nearly 200 grand that they pocketed if they sold these bad boys. If they somehow were buying, if they somehow managed to scoop these for 13 cents when they were bid for 14 and offered at 15, then more power to them, I suppose. But it does seem like they were selling these bad boys. Mr. Meatball, is that your conclusion as well? And what are your thoughts on everyone's other favorite travel tech name, SABR?
Yeah, this one, we see a lot of paper in this guy. Seems to have woken up a little bit. This thing was in the toilet for a very long period of time. Last earnings, nice pop. But yeah, this be interesting to see whether how this one ends up playing out. But it looked like it was going to zero, and then it's really gotten a nice pop here.
I remember this one being very hot a long time ago, then kind of falling off everybody's radar. And you're right, now, as with everything tech and somewhat lower priced, starting to get on some people's radar a little bit again. Are you intrigued by the rise of the old SABR doggy again? Listeners, I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know, because it's now time to unleash the beast that is Uncle Mike. It is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, Uncle Mike, take it away, sir. 12 minutes on one IRS, a.k.a. Mike Rotunda, sir. Go for it.
I'm actually going to do us one better right now. Something that's never been done in the over 1,000 episodes of the history of this wonderful program. You guys ready for something a little different today?
Ooh, 12 minutes on Barry Windham? Go.
Okay, I can't condense that. So that's a tall ask because I have a lot on Barry Windham. But what I'm going to go through today is that I know a lot of our listeners also will bet on football this fall. And so I'm going to give you an insider's perspective on things you may want to look for if you are going to be betting on football this fall. And just some things to take a look at when you're evaluating teams of whether you think one team's going to win or the other team's going to win or what the handicap should be, that type of thing. Some things that you may or may not know and things that I would look for if I were to bet on football. Now, full disclosure, I don't think I've ever bet on a football game in my life, but I do want to give you kind of an insider's perspective on what NFL head coaches look at when they're analyzing other teams. So if you are looking to bet on football this fall, these are some things that I would start to look at that you may or may not look at. Some of the things you probably do, but these are some things that I would look at. Most important statistic, my opinion, when you are looking to analyze a team is not the average rushing yards, passing yards, or whatever. Don't get me wrong, those are important, but I think the most important one is turnover ratio. What team in the NFL, if you're looking for a matchup, what is the turnover? And let's say that one team's playing another team throughout the season. What team had a better turnover ratio? A lot of times, the team that wins is the team that turns over the ball the fewest amount of times. That's something that's often overlooked by the general public. Inside or within the NFL, that's one of the most important statistics that insiders typically look at. A couple other things with which you can look at. If you're trying to evaluate a team's rushing yardage, oftentimes what you need to do is look at the yards per carry, not the overall rushing yards. A lot of times you'll see sportscasters making a big deal saying, oh, this guy got 160 yards or 150 yards rushing on the day. But if he had 35 carries, well, big deal. That's really not that much production of the single person. Now, with that being said, it does need to be noted that that is a good amount of rushing yards, but if it took him that many carries to get it, that's something that you need to factor in as well. Now, the other thing is that if someone all of a sudden is averaging 12 yards per carry, wow, he averaged 12 yards per carry. Well, he only got 6 carries and one run was for 48 yards. So understand that you're looking for a lot more deeper things than just the statistic that you see. When you're evaluating offenses, how often does the quarterback get sacked? That's a huge thing in the NFL. If you don't give up sacks, you're typically going to be successful. What football's all about these days is protecting the quarterback and getting to the quarterback. What's the health of the offensive line? That's something that a lot of fantasy football people or a lot of people who bet on football really don't look at or even know how to look at. How many starts? What's the average amount of starts the offensive lineman has? Where is that, or what's the experience of that offensive line? And has that offensive line proven to be successful in the past? And if it's a new offensive line, what's the history of some of the linemen themselves? Where have they played? What have they done? Or are they just a bunch of ragtag people that they threw together because they are relying on their playmakers and they have to be below the salary cap? What's the health of the offensive line? What's the health of the team? What is the quality of the opponents with which they have played so far? Have they actually played good teams or have they been playing bad teams? That's another thing with which to look at. A couple other statistics that are oftentimes overlooked. The completion percentage of the quarterback. Is the quarterback completing less than 50% of his passes? If he is, then he's not doing very well on the year. The final one that I think is overlooked oftentimes is the punt return average. Oftentimes, teams that have good punt return averages are pretty successful on the field, and that's also one that is looked at and taken very seriously within the NFL in the special teams world. So those are just some things to look at. It is football season. Thank God it's been long enough of a wait, and that is what I would look at. those are some things that I would look at if I were to bet on football, which I don't, but I know a lot of our audience members do. So from an insider, those are some things to take a look at.
I know.
And that is the strategy block for the day.
Uncle Mike, you reminded me, it's almost fantasy football season again. I got to get our teams up and going here for all of our various leagues. All right, listeners, so blame Uncle Mike that there is no fantasy football show. Overby's all over me. He wants to do it all the time. So we'll see. We'll see where we get going. Meantime, listeners, it is time to keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we do just that. We tell you what we're keeping an eye on for the rest of the week. Let's also look back really quickly and see what we had on the docket for last week. Our question of the week last week was, hey, in these troubled times, where are you allocating the majority of your portfolio? And, cash was duking it out with equities pretty much the entire week. They ended up going out, weirdly enough, at an exact tie, 35.7% each for cash and for equities. So you folks evenly split on which you prefer right now. Fixed income coming in second/third, I suppose, 19%. And commodity/crypto bringing up the rear. This week's question of the week, kind of more of a 10,000-foot question. We've had a lot of new releases in the world of options in the last decade or two, new products. A lot of them have fallen by the wayside. Some have stuck around longer and made more of an impact. So we're asking you, which of these products has had the largest overall impact on the options market? Gave you three choices and the infamous other. VIX, the weeklies, so the general category of weekly options, and now the newest addition to the pantheon, which has taken the world by storm, the daily options or the zero DTE, call them what you will. And then, of course, your other right in with your others. There are a lot of different choices for that, listeners. You could talk about other vol products. You could talk about binaries. You could talk about whatever floats your boat in that other category. Mr. Meatball, we will start with you, sir. What is your vote for the product that has the largest overall impact on the options market? B, what do you think our audience is voting for? And C, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week?
Well, the product that has the biggest impact on the overall options world?
That would be it, sir. So you're going VIX, you're going weeklies, you're going dailies, you got some other you want to write in?
Dailies. It's not even close. Dailies.
Interesting. Even though they're the newest addition to the pantheon, you think already they...
Oh, yeah, for sure. But right now it's the dailies.
More than your bread and butter VIX.
More than my bread and butter VIX, more than the weeklies, more than anything. Zero DTE is they have opened a box of volume that is unmatched, and I've never seen this kind of explosion in volume, and they are a huge hairy deal. So it's that, not even close.
Perhaps the Pandora's box of the options market. Once opened, it can never be closed, listeners. Interesting. You think our audience is going that way too?
I hope so, because that is the correct answer.
Let's hope there's some hope lying at the bottom of that daily box as well, listeners, for all of our mythology fans out there. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you. Which of these products do you think is the most impactful? What do you think our audience is going for? And then C, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week?
I'm actually going to go against the grain here. I'm going to go with the VIX because the VIX has a longer track record than zero DTEs. Now, in my opinion, a year from now, it'll be zero DTEs. I think it is going to continue the explosion of everything. But the VIX has been doing this for a lot. The VIX was doing this before it was cool, so to speak. So I'm going to go with the VIX on this one. And I think the audience is as well.
And what about the rest of the week? What are you keeping an eye on, sir?
I just wanted to see if we can continue to hold the 4,400 level. And any news that may come with China, with where they're going, with what they're doing, seeing if their numbers can continue to do what they're doing. And then election season is upon us, or indictment season, with now we got Republicans and Democrats trying to put each other in jail. So it's a whole new level of war, politically speaking. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on.
Indictment season, indeed. Right now, it is a tie between the dailies and the VIX. That doesn't seem to be the way things were going. Weeklies coming in right behind them at 25%, 37.5% for each. They just went live a few minutes ago, so that's just the very early blush. I'd have to say, if I had to weigh in, actually I won't weigh in. I'll wait till the end of the week. I hate to sway people in these early days, but I do have a clear thought we'll get to that in a little bit, listeners. And it is time to wind things up here on the show, unfortunately. All right, listeners, that music means we are done, at least with this show. Don't worry, I'll be back in a little bit with the crypto rundown coming up in about an hour. So if you're listening live, hang out. We'll post some fun stuff in the chat for you to listen to and enjoy. We'll be back in a little bit with our guests coming up here on the crypto rundown. But before we do that, let's go around the horn. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, if folks want more Uncle Mike in their lives, where should they go? What should they do?
stcharleswealth.com if you're looking to work with a financial advisor. And you can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW.
And Mr. Meatball, if they want more meatball goodness in their lives, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, come and check us out at optionpit.com. I'm right in the Trader's Edge every day. I'm going to be talking about the big events that we have to watch this week. Things like non-farms and GDP and the stocks that are on my radar. So, as well as VIX and volatility, as I always do.
All right, listeners, that's going to do it for us here on the old OB. Back in a little bit with the crypto rundown, and then back again with your usual array of programming throughout the rest of the week until we gather here together. I'll actually be in the same room as the Flow Master over there at SEBO on Thursday for the next episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.